I never imagined that a simple bird feeder could spark a full-blown neighborhood war, but that's exactly how it began. One bright Saturday morning, I was sipping coffee on my porch, enjoying the cheerful chirps of cardinals, finches, and blue jays flocking to the feeder I had carefully hung last week. It was my little slice of peace, a tiny oasis in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. Then, out of nowhere, Karen appeared. "That feeder is an eyesore. It violates HOA rules," she barked, her fingers jabbing at the air like a conductor signaling doom. Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood, HOA president, and professional nitpicker, had made it her personal mission to micromanage every blade of grass and mailbox decoration in our community. And apparently, a bird feeder was the ultimate crime. I tried reasoning with her. "Karen, it's just a feeder. It attracts birds, not trouble." But reasoning with Karen was like trying to teach algebra to a brick wall. She waved a laminated page of rules in my face, citing some clause about unauthorized structures visible from the street, pointed out that a hanging feeder hardly qualified as a structure, but she was already drafting her next complaint. The audacity stunned me, but it also lit a spark. I could either comply and let Karen dictate my backyard happiness, or I could fight back. And in that moment, I made a decision. If she wanted war over a bird feeder, she wasn't going to see it coming. Over the next few days, I began plotting my counterattack. I knew Karen loved routine. She prided herself on controlling every street corner, every mailbox, every shrub. That meant any disruption in her perfectly ordered world would make a statement. And what better disruption than a display so loud, colorful, and impossible to ignore that even her morning coffee couldn't drown it out? I started small, peacock feathers. A single giant iridescent feather appeared in her mailbox, then another. Each morning, more feathers appeared in strategic spots. On her walkway, by her garden gnome, even tied to her HOA sign with a note. "For your feathered thoughts." Karen's reactions escalated. Quickly, furrowed brows, muttered threats, increasingly frantic calls to the HOA. But I wasn't done. I had bigger plans, ones that would ensure the neighborhood never looked at bird feeders or peacocks the same way again. And that's when I realized the battle had turned from a simple backyard squabble into an all-out peacock parade plan. A parade that would march directly into Karen's driveway. The morning of the operation, I felt a thrill I hadn't experienced since high school pranks. I had spent the past week preparing, sourcing peacock costumes, training my friends in synchronized strutting, and even renting a few actual peacocks from a local farm. Some might call it overkill. I called it precision. By sunrise, the neighborhood was still quiet, blissfully unaware that chaos and feathers were about to descend. My team of parade participants arrived, each clad in vibrant peacock plumage, feathers fanned, sequins catching the first rays of light. I handed out last-minute instructions. "Remember, elegance with menace. Make sure she knows this is not just a bird feeder. It's a statement." Karen's house came into view. There she was, sipping coffee on her porch, scanning the street like a hawk for rule breakers. Her sunglasses did nothing to hide her scowl. She looked confident, until the first peacock strutted past her mailbox. It started small, one human-sized peacock gliding down the sidewalk, calling out a surprisingly accurate squawk. Karen blinked. Then another joined, and another, until our feathered brigade had formed a line of spectacularly over-the-top color, shimmering in the morning sun. Finally, the rented peacocks arrived, their tails fully fanned, heads bobbing, making a racket that even the calmest HOA president couldn't ignore. Karen stumbled back, nearly spilling her coffee. What is this?" she yelled, waving at the parade. I waved politely in return, pretending to tip an invisible hat. "Good morning, Karen. Just a little tribute to your rule-following spirit," I said with a grin. The real magic came as the parade made its grand turn, right into her driveway. The rented peacocks strutted purposefully, their talons tapping the pavement, their feathers brushing her perfectly manicured garden. My human team fanned out, each one mimicking bird calls, adding a surreal soundtrack of squawks, whistles, and exaggerated peacock cries. Neighbors began emerging, drawn by the spectacle. Phones appeared from every porch and balcony. Some were laughing hysterically, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Karen's HOA authority, once untouchable, was reduced to her, yelling feudal instructions over a crescendo of flapping feathers and squeals. I couldn't help but notice a tiny smirk trying to fight its way onto her face. Even she couldn't deny the creativity or the audacity of the display. But make no mistake, the war wasn't over. This was only the opening salvo, a bold statement that I wasn't going to let a bird feeder, or Karen, dictate my happiness. By the time the parade retreated down the street, Karen was left standing amid a sea of feathers, squawking complaints that would echo through HOA emails for weeks. And me? I was already planning the next move, knowing that this bird feeder battle had turned into something far bigger. A war of flamboyance, mischief, and neighborhood legend. I thought the Peacock parade had delivered the perfect blow, but Karen isn't the type to surrender quietly. The very next morning, I received an email with the subject line, "Cease and desist. Immediate action required." She cited everything from disturbing the peace to unauthorized wildlife intrusion. I almost laughed out loud. Unauthorized wildlife intrusion? Really, Karen? The Peacocks were legally rented. Still, I knew she was serious. Her HOA influence ran deep, and she had a talent for rallying neighbors to her cause, or, more accurately, her complaints. That meant it was time to step up my game. I couldn't back down. Not now. Not after everything. The bird feeder was innocent, but this had become about principle. About showing that creativity and a sense of humor weren't crimes. By midweek, Karen began a stealthy campaign. I noticed small annoyances appearing around my yard. Tiny HOA violation stickers placed on my trash bins, handwritten notes on my mailbox, even a small recording of peacock squawks stuck under my front porch mat. It was subtle, passive-aggressive, and totally infuriating. Clearly, she thought she could outmaneuver me with petty tactics. But I had learned the key to dealing with Karen. Escalate with style, not stress. I spent the evening crafting a plan that would combine spectacle, humor, and a gentle lesson in perspective. I called it Operation Feathered Counterattack. Step 1. Invite every neighbor over for what I called a Neighborhood Bird Appreciation Day. Step 2. Transform my yard into a living aviary. Step 3. Make Karen the unintended centerpiece. The day arrived. Birdhouses, feeders, and strategically placed mirrors created the illusion of a yard teeming with exotic birds. A Bluetooth speaker played an orchestrated mix of squawks, chirps, and coos. Even a couple of trained parrots, borrowed from a friend, performed synchronized dances in front of the fence. Karen arrived, clipboard in hand, scanning for violations. I greeted her warmly. "Good morning, Karen. Come see the bird paradise you inspired." She hesitated at the gate, clearly unsure if she should lecture or flee. Her eyes widened as a mechanical peacock, part of my secret weapon, sprang to life, fanning its feathers with a dramatic flourish. Karen jumped back, stumbled, and then froze. The entire street erupted in laughter. This wasn't just a display, it was a turning point. Karen realized that controlling everyone else's joy wasn't going to work. Her authority was being outshone by color, feathers, and creativity she couldn't police. The war of wills was still alive, but momentum had shifted. I could feel the tides turning in my favor. By sunset, Karen had retreated to her house, muttering complaints while neighbors clapped and laughed. And me? I knew the grand finale was coming. I wasn't done with this battle. Not by a long shot. By the weekend, the neighborhood was buzzing. Everyone knew about the ongoing bird feeder feud, and curiosity had transformed it into a full-blown spectacle. Karen, once untouchable in her self-appointed throne of HOA authority, was now the star of a feather-filled saga. But I wasn't done. The grand finale had to be unforgettable. I spent the morning setting the stage. My driveway became a stage of chaos and color. Life-sized peacock statues, hanging bird feeders with shimmering ribbons, and dozens of mirrors that multiplied the effect of feathers and light. My secret weapon, a flock of trained peacocks, was poised, each ready to strut in perfect formation. I even had bird marshals, friends in elaborate feathered costumes, stationed strategically to guide the spectacle. Karen emerged at her usual hour, clipboard in hand, ready for inspection. Her eyes immediately widened as she saw the transformation. Before she could speak, a trumpet of squawks echoed from the speakers, and the first wave of peacocks, both real and human, marched into her driveway. Feathers fanned, colors glittered, and the synchronized squawking created a surreal cacophony. Neighbors poured onto the street, phones in hand, laughing, cheering, and recording every moment. Karen's attempts at authority were drowned out by a chorus of applause and squawks. She waved her arms, yelling, "Stop this immediately! It's a violation!" But the parade ignored her entirely, weaving around her cars, mailbox, and flower beds with playful precision. I stepped forward, smiling calmly. "Karen, I know rules are important, but sometimes happiness needs a little creativity. The birds, the feathers, they're all perfectly legal. And now, you've got a front row seat to the joy you tried to suppress." Her face turned red, but there was no way to stop the spectacle. One of the parrots landed on her railing, squawking a single word, "Peace!" The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Even Karen's closest allies were shaking their heads, caught between horror and amusement. By mid-afternoon, Karen retreated inside, muttering threats about fines and complaints, but the damage was done. The neighborhood had witnessed her control unravel, replaced by color, chaos, and laughter. I returned to my porch, sipping coffee, watching cardinals and finches flit to the original feeder, now unbothered by HOA oversight. In the end, it wasn't about the bird feeder. It was about standing up to absurd authority, finding joy in creativity, and reminding everyone, including Karen, that a little humor and imagination can go a long way. The legend of the Peacock parade spread. A cautionary tale and a celebration rolled into one, proving that sometimes the simplest acts, like hanging a bird feeder, can spark the most unforgettable victories. And as the sun set over a feather-strewn driveway, I couldn't help but smile. Victory, after all, had never looked so colorful. If you loved watching this chaos unfold, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more wild HOA stories and crazy neighborhood battles. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you do if Karen tried to ruin your backyard? And make sure to smash that like button if you want to see even bigger Peacock pranks in the next video.